Greetings, comrade, and welcome to our instructive video. Capitalism is an economic system based on the power of the free market. It hinges on private ownership of wealth and industry and leaves the most vulnerable people in our society behind. Despite this, it's the economic system used in Australia and most of the Western world. The major opposing system to capitalism is socialism. In a socialist country, all wealth is owned by the populace through the government. Socialism is a utopian system in which all people are equal. It is used in some Eastern nations, such as the great paradises of our modern world, Cuba and China. Today, we're going to teach you how to build a socialist utopia.
There are two ways to achieve socialism. The first is democratic socialism, which involves the nationalisation of private industry through legislation. To achieve democratic socialism, you will need a legislature with a socialist majority. Step one is to introduce the legislation in question. For example, back in 1947, long before that right-wing reactionary Gough Whitlam stripped the Australian Labor Party of its principles, the Labor government of Ben Chifley introduced the Bank Nationalisation Act. This legislation brought Australia's banks under government and therefore public control. Step two, steer this legislation through a parliament or congress of your choice. Step three, watch your country's most superior court strike down your legislation, and step four, get completely thrashed at the next election. These last two steps highlight the problem with democratic socialism. The rich and powerful don't like having their capital taken away, and will use their ill-gotten wealth to fight you all the way.
Because democratic socialism is always doomed to fail, revolutionary socialism is your only option. Revolutionary socialism, also called Marxist socialism or communism, involves overthrowing your capitalist dictator. It is the most reliable way to achieve your socialist utopia. The first step is to find a country with huge income inequality. This will make people angry at capitalism's inequality. A good historical example of this is Tsarist Russia, and a good contemporary example is the land of capitalism, the United States. In 2012, the top 1% of American capitalists took home 71% of the nation's wealth.
Step two is to secure an economic crisis. This can be achieved by organising a stock market crash, the bursting of a housing bubble, a war, or a run on the banks. This plainly demonstrates capitalism's failure to the populace. Again, a good historical example of this is pre-revolution Russia, whose economy was ravaged by its involvement in the First World War. Inflation peaked at almost 400%, and food and coal scarcity caused great hardship for the populace. This set the stage for the Russian Revolution. The United States, after the housing market collapse that caused the GFC, offers a fantastic recent example of a nation in the midst of a crisis caused by capitalism's failure. Now, the US looks primed for a socialist revolution, until you consider step three, no democracies. People won't usually take up arms against their government when they can just vote them out. So make sure you don't live in one of those things. And if you do, you have to abolish your country's democratic institutions. The importance of an autocracy to your success can be seen in the Cuban Revolution, where it was Fulgencio Batista's 1952 establishment of a dictatorship that facilitated Castro's revolution in 1958.
Now that you've established the perfect climate for your socialist revolution, it's time to get started. This brings us to step four, rallying your supporters around you. Make an example of the undemocratic government that has supposedly caused all the economic hardship. This will encourage people to act on their hatred of the capitalist government. As a side note, do not appeal to anyone who supports the current regime. In 1933, a group of US business officials planned a coup against President Franklin Roosevelt, but made the fatal mistake of trying to enlist General Smedley Butler to their cause. He warned Roosevelt, thereby forcing the business officials to cancel their coup. Don't let that be you. Imperative to your revolution now is to really hit the point home that your government is obsessive and does not have your best interests at heart. This must be done as your revolution must be seen as liberation and not, terrorism, which is of course ridiculous. An excellent example of this statement against the ruling class is the classic French "let them eat cake," which was falsely claimed to be said by our out-of-touch Marie Antoinette, who symbolised nobility having no idea of the starvation experienced by the French populace during the French Revolution. It's also important to note that what you say about the government can be completely untrue. It's just got to be memorable. Just look at our last example. It's still widely believed 250 years after it was invented.
Now this is where things get exciting. It's now that you must strike. No more working in the shadows. The time has come for you to overthrow your government and spill the blood of your enemies. Now this element is what determines whether or not your socialist utopia becomes a reality, so its success is essential. You need to get rid of the government so that you can establish your own socialist governing body. Fortunately, this is not impossible, and you can observe the Russian, Chinese, and Cuban revolutions for this. Most importantly, however, is that you must not lose hope if your revolution fails to totally overthrow the government. You can always have another one. After all, the once great Russia had two before it flourished into communism. The trick is simply to get your foot in the door and to use your increased political leverage to climb the ladder further. Also, strike quickly. Chaos and surprise are your greatest allies.
If you've made it this far, then congratulations and welcome to power, comrade. You may think it's clear sailing from now on, but remember, a utopia requires work. So be vigilant. You must assure that everybody agrees with you, openly or by force. Opposition from anyone is a wavering of faith in your utopia and must be dealt with, or you risk losing the system.
The press must say exactly what you want it to, and external influence must be outlawed. All good communist governments use this to stay in power, such as the migration-free USSR and North Korea. This goal can be achieved in many ways, but some of the more well-known methods include the late Berlin Wall and the more modern Great Firewall of China. You can do this in any way you see fit, but the bottom line is you have to make sure that your populace cannot use information against you, and they cannot escape to the world beyond your control. They will become corrupted by capitalism and will undermine the purity of your regime. Now, once you've set your wheels in motion, you have no choice but to watch your socialist utopia slip between your fingers and invariably decay into a socialist dystopia. Even the best of us cannot escape it. Vladimir Lenin himself couldn't halt the creeping of corruption hidden safely behind deception and restricted information. Your final enemy, comrade, is innate human greed and loss of all motivation when it cannot be satisfied. This is simply a reality of the process. Maybe you will be the first to solve this final hurdle. And you must, because if you don't, your socialist dystopia will decay further into a filthy capitalist dystopia. And then you'll be economically impaired and technologically behind the rest of the world.
Your only release will be death, and to truly perpetuate your now corrupted legacy, you must ensure you leave your country's leadership to a truly tyrannical successor, like Joseph Stalin. They'll make you look reasonable by comparison. This will also help to lengthen the longevity of your regime, because people without morals will do literally anything to stay in power. Like selling your country's food to buy guns to further suppress your starving populace. Anything's possible with a madman at the top.